Was the Skyline R31 revolutionary? Rather, it was the result of evolution, technical, marketing. As we remember, in the late 60s, Nissan successfully entered motorsport, and with it into the segment of charged models. But by the mid-70s, due to the fuel crisis, the company was experiencing great difficulties with the implementation of the GTR version, the release of which was quietly curtailed. In fairness, we note that the R31 copied its predecessor in suspension. From McPherson, back in the basic version of the solid beam on the springs. In equipment hire, an independent design on oblique levers. The entire line of motors was revised. Of the already known, only the Ford CA18 remained, in addition to which the CA20 was offered on the Australian market, where Sky was produced and sold, including under the name Pintera. The antediluvian diesel LD28 was replaced with the newly appeared RD28. The main achievement of the R31 can be considered the debut of the RB series engines on the Skyline. Moreover, if in the previous generation the most charged modifications had exactly 4-cylinder units, gasoline, turbo 6s, however, were also available, but they did not hit with power. Now only RB began to be responsible for this. In fact, they presented a motor of only one volume, a 2.0 liter. But in 4 versions, atmospheric, 115 and 130 horsepower, and turbocharged, 145 and 170 horsepower, with one camshaft and the same with 2 shafts. Atma version developed 150 and 165 horsepower, turbo, 180 to 210. Meanwhile, in Australia, there was a 3.0-liter RB30E on the Skyline, which was not delivered to Japan, but is still popular in the tuning environment. Other innovations included the Heika system, which ensured the rotation of the rear wheels, and the fact that the automatic was left without options as a 4-speed, for Nissan in the mid-80s, was already natural. On the bodies, too, there was an alternative. The hatchback was abandoned in the previous generation, but the station wagon was returned. Plus, traditional for Japan of that time, a sedan with a hardtop, a real one, without central roof pillars, and a coupe. In 1987, the Skyline underwent a planned restyling, which changed, for example, the slope of the front lighting along with the grille. But more interesting is how, depending on the technical design, they designed the back part, namely the lights, with separate squares and rectangular, after facelift, indicated that this Skyline, whether sedan or hardtop, in the base equipment. That is, with a solid rear axle and a 1.8-liter engine. Characteristic, hobs, first open, then under a common cap, to the fact that we have a car in front of us, albeit with a younger one, but already a 2.0-liter engine and independent suspension. We have just the first option, once there was a CA18 with the mechanics. But the interior equipment raises questions. Apparently, not the minimum, since there are electric mirrors, however, without the possibility of folding with a button, rear window heating, even parking sensors. However, the sensors themselves have been lost for 30 years. But there are no power windows, a tachometer, the place of which in the instrument cluster is occupied by ours. Finally, the climate on the sliders, although already in 1985 it was partially push-button. In general, and taking into account the racing orientation, and the R31 still performed successfully in the ring, and the Skyline itself was rather strangely equipped. For example, he could have a good head audio unit with a CD player and a headlight washer, which is not at all typical for the Japanese domestic market. And at the same time, he did not offer to dry the air, although air conditioners were already installed on the most wooden models. So long. The profile of the seats along with the upholstery was also very different. From what movie is being shown today in this VIP room to I don't want to go to these carousels. There was an intermediate version with adjustable lumbar support and side support rollers. In our case, obviously, the most simple armchairs. It's good that they didn't sit out for so many years, and the driver's seat has height adjustment. As for the sofa, there was some molding on it in the richer equipment. Presented here, as you understand, is not suspected of creating special comfort. Well, what, one wonders, is the ancestor of GTI era. So, a sedan for every day, economical and without pretensions. And yet you look from a certain angle, you can feel the breed. Now, in order to make the boiled car look spectacular, they use large diameter rollers and body kits. And the R31, thanks to sharp chopped edges and classic proportions, even carried the atmospheric 4 under the hood as if it were a turbo engine twice as powerful. And yet, the builder of this Skyline did not deny himself the pleasure of bringing a little old-school charm to the exterior. Fender flares, a small rear wing on the trunk lid, a characteristic design of discs with a negative overhang. That's all you need to look fresher than at 32. And to go, 4.5-liter VH45DE, known from the Infiniti Q45 and Nissan President, also contributes to the exterior. Did you notice how the front squatted? How is the rear edge of the hood turned up over the wings? Yes, a big V8 with a block collapse of 90 degrees, despite the fact that the subframe had to be lowered and the oil filter removed separately, still did not completely disappear into the engine compartment. It's good that the automatic from the same motor, along with the lever, is harmoniously located, and the original issue successfully disappeared under the bottom and in the rear overhang. Sounds mighty, gurgles at idle and roars in a voice under speed. Can you be quieter? No, don't. The sound is beautiful, but not loud enough to return to the regular resonator/muffler or worry about the fact that there is no 6RB. The main thing is that the accompaniment is fully consistent with the traction characteristics of the engine. Still, it would not be so with 280 forces, 400 Newton meters, and about 1,200 kilograms of equipment. Brings down sky as it should, pressing into the seat and surprising the neighbors downstream, who did not expect such agility from the old man. True, the owner of the Dynamics is not entirely satisfied. He says that, in a good way, it would be necessary to change the non-native fuel pump to a more productive one. The V8 installation also affected the weight distribution. It seems that the aluminum VH45 should not be much heavier than the cast iron RB, most likely lighter. However, the trim on the nose is only the visible result of the swap. On the move, the rear wheels, not loaded with ballast, jump along the road like balls. It would be necessary to play with elastic and damping elements. By the way, they ignore rough bumps quite well, but, unfortunately, they miss blows from rounded ones. Something needs to be done with the brakes. Regular ones cannot cope with the increased power supply. And subsequently, probably with a bridge that is overloaded with torque. In a word, there is enough work. But it is the same with any swap project in which the 4 is changed to the 8. For those who would like to leave the R31 in the original, we inform you that at the time of preparing the article, only a couple of copies in good condition were found on sale throughout the country, 170 and 600,000 rubles. The rest, a couple of dozen, turned out to be cheaper, from 50,000 to 130,000 rubles, but in a form that requires not only time and money, but also true love for this car.